What up, everybody? It's your girl July from Kickback, Couture, your favorite rapper, favorite producer, favorite music mentor, whatever I might be to you. But today, I want to talk about Reason 12. At first, my approach would have matched all of the other reviews you've seen or heard, read, but rather than talk about what's been added in the update, high res, blah blah blah, I would like to discuss the plugin format of Reason, which is the Reason Rack. Reason started as a DAW, or digital audio workstation. Actually, it started as a collection of separate apps that eventually combined into one, kinda. There was Recycle, which was great for chopping up sampled loops. This is kind of present in the Reason sequencer with the absence of a sensitivity knob for transient detection. It still exists, but you know. Rebirth was a virtual synthesizer that emulated the 808 and 909. It was discontinued and removed from the picture though. Another ghost of Reason Studios is Rewire, which allows MIDI and audio data to be shared between applications. Rewire was annexed with the addition of MIDI out, which only works with the plugin version and not the DAW. So if you were using Rewire and you upgraded, you probably incorporated a crazy workaround like exporting MIDI, saving presets, and opening a new project in another DAW just to get everything to work. They even acquired a few apps like Figure, Take, and released a mobile companion to Reason called Reason Compact. With a few exceptions, there's evidence of all of these different ventures found in Reason today, but to be honest, it's often not enough. Reason's updates primarily target new users rather than cater to the current users, the diehards, and now there is a big emphasis on Reason being a plugin. So, since the Reason audience asks for the same features every round and never gets the ones that matter the most, the ones that compare to what else is on the market, or even groundbreaking expansions that don't reinvent a wheel that was already previously spun, let's just talk about it like it's a plugin, and that's it. Both of these devices, Reason Rack plugin and Kontakt, can be used as instruments in whatever format you might require. VST, AU, AAX, it'll work as an instrument. And both devices also have multiple outputs. So in Reason, you have this little I/O device right here, and in Kontakt, you have this output section down here. Unlike Kontakt, Reason can also be loaded as an audio effect and a MIDI effect. So Reason's effects are all in this section over here, and you got chorus, a sweeper, a pulverizer, a echo, alligator, scream, distortion devices, vocoders, reverbs, a little auto-tune, Neptune, pitch adjuster, and more compressors, EQs, Audiomatic, which will like put a certain effect on your song, like vinyl, radio, or whichever button you press. And the list stops about here. After rotary speaker, everything else is just extra stuff I have on my account. You got polar, a pitch shifter, just tons of different effects aside from all of these instruments that you have available, which stops at about this right here. So you got a collection of drum machines, a collection of pianos, a large collection of synths, and I can go over those more in depth in a second. Whereas in Kontakt, these are the instruments that it comes with, and they're not necessarily instruments. They are, but they're more so sample libraries. So whereas in Reason, you would get a collection of synths and rack devices, samplers, stuff like that, you get sample libraries in Kontakt. Now Reason has sample libraries and stock sounds, which you find in this area over here, but it's very different in presentation compared to Kontakt. So as far as Kontakt's effects, if we come over here, whoops, that is the wrong button, and we click on this little save button, new instrument, the wrench, we click on the effects drop down, we see we got some different filters, we got some EQs, dynamics, compressor limiter, amps, stomp boxes, modulation options, and some utilities. Keep in mind, none of these effects can be used on another instrument as a send effect or an insert in your digital audio workstation. You can only use Kontakt. You can only use Kontakt as an instrument device. So as for the insert effects, the only thing different here would be the reverbs and the delays. So we got reverbs and delays here. And then if we scroll down, you'll see the send effects are the same. The delays, the reverbs, we got modulation and some utilities. So you definitely have options in Kontakt for mixing the samples that you import into it, but it very much has a primary focus on sample libraries and sampling itself. But this is what that UI looks like if you were to begin importing your own samples. This is the mapping editor where you would drag and drop your samples. In Reason, if we come look at the utilities, the combinator is kind of what you would use to build your own device if you wanted to. And what I mean by build your own device, kind of like if I was to drag in one of these synth presets. There we go. So this is like what this device looks like, and this was obviously created for you. And Reason has the option for you to create your own, just like Kontakt does, but Kontakt will require some scripting, which means it's like another word for coding. So you have to know how to make this bigger and add buttons, and it would look like code. Whereas in Reason, if you wanted to create your own devices like this, then you can click this drop down here, click configure, and you can change the color. You can resize it. And if you wanted to add buttons and faders, all you got to do is click on what you need. So the control, we can add a button. We come to style, we can add different faders. Back to style, we can add wheels like these ones over here. And there's different options you have for how you want it to look. You can even import your own backdrop here, your own background or skin, whatever you want to call it. Over here we got some switches too, so you got buttons just like this. This is kind of similar to the rack in Ableton. They give you a certain amount of knobs, but they don't give you buttons. That's what I don't like about Ableton's rack. Unless you know Max for Live, you can't get access to those buttons easily because you need Max for Live. But anyways, these are the different buttons you have access to, and these buttons light up. It's pretty cool, pretty easy to work once you get the hang of it. And this is what the interface looks like for creating your own devices in Reason. And of course you have access to the individual samplers and the effects that are shipping with it. Now both of them are the same price, $399. The only difference between them, I would say, not the only difference, but one of the main caveats from why you might choose Kontakt over Reason is if you're a music producer and you want really intricate, really nice sound libraries. Reason doesn't have a big library of developers with the accolades of native instruments or, you know, any Kontakt library you might see like Output. Those companies just aren't making libraries for Reason, at least not yet. So if you want like sound iron, some beautiful strings, beautiful guitars, pianos, sampled instruments, definitely go with Kontakt. If you're looking for a sound design tool, you might have more fun with Reason. It's definitely up there in creativity, and the possibilities are endless. Not to mention, in Reason, you have this wiring solution and you can do tons of control voltage stuff if you're into control voltage. Now, I mentioned Reason can also be used as a MIDI effect. So we come over to the players. These are the MIDI devices that are included in Reason. So you got scales and chords, beat map. This is dope for creating non-traditional drum patterns, something that you haven't done before. You just add it on and it'll like add some randomization. Got dual arpeggio. It's a arpeggio rack extension, no echo. We got a drum sequencer over here, a pattern mutator, and this will allow you to play a pattern or record one from the sequencer and mutate it by changing the parameters that are on the face of the device. So octave, swap, density, all these things can be randomized with this mutation button, and it'll make an alternative melody, a chord progression, whatever you put into it. Polystep sequencer, it's another sequencer. Good way to make some chord progressions if you feel like you don't want to do it in your DAW. But other than that, you might prefer your DAW, although it's cool. The only downside to these MIDI devices, if you were going to use Reason as a MIDI device, is that it's not necessarily comparable to something like Scalar or say the Captain Chords, Captain Melody, that line. It's not necessarily comparable to that because scales and chords isn't good for like jazz or blues. When you occasionally hop out of the scale for a certain chord, even R&B, you'd have to make like a custom chord or a custom scale, and even the scale wouldn't necessarily fit because we're constantly hopping in and out of different scales, so it wouldn't make sense in the aspect of that world. Now, I did mention sampling. Both of them have a heavy emphasis on sampling. As far as Kontakt's sample device, this is what you have to upload your samples. If you were to check out Reason, you would see that you have some more options. Whoops. We got the Kong drum device, and this is a drum sampler device. We also got the Red Drum, and this is also a drum sampling device, but it also lets you program patterns. You can add your own wavetable samples into Europa. We got Mimic, it's a creative sampler. It also comes with a sensitivity knob so that you can break up your individual slices and play them on each key. We got Grain, which is a granular sampler, so you can take something and have it sample grains and jump through the clip and create something very immaculate out of a sound that you otherwise didn't think could do what it might do in Grain. Also got these dope synths up here, but more on the samplers. We got the NNXT, which is dope for loading samplers. This is the one that looks closest to Kontakt, where you can upload or drag and drop in a series of samples and map them how you would want to. And this is the map editor in Kontakt. And this is kind of what you get on the surface when you drag and drop in Kontakt. We also got this old school NN19 sampler, which is the one that came before the NNXT. So tons of options for sampling if you're into sampling, and tons of options for synths if you're into synths. Some specifically catered to bass. We got a grain table synthesizer and a subtractor synthesizer, polysonic synthesizer, and this one has different types of synthesis modules within it. So wavetable, phase modulation, FM, etc. And Europa is the one that is comparable to Serum. There it is. So you got your wavetables, and you got some modifiers, spectral filter, harmonics, your LFOs down here, got some envelopes. I did a video comparing Europa to Serum, and if you want to check that out, definitely check it out. I think it's a really good comparison video. Both of them could look like eyesores on the surface. Like sometimes it just looks very old and outdated. Reason is kind of based on it being a rack, like an analog studio rack, whereas Kontakt is kind of following the same kind of trajectory, but you end up with devices that look like kinetic treats, which is very different than something with traditional buttons and knobs and faders. So you get more variety in how something looks in Kontakt. Everything is kind of expected to look like a real analog rack in Reason, and you don't really get too much outside of this. I think Reason is more suited for a drag and drop workflow than Kontakt. It would require scripting. As I said, like, I don't know how much work this interface might have took in the previous one we were just looking at, which was the synth. That one probably took a ton of work as well. As for the sounds that Kontakt comes with, It comes with this kinetic treats, this factory library, and I'll hit the drop down for you. If you don't know what sounds they come with, retro machines, which is like some retro emulations. DX7 EP, it does not come with this one. I purchased that separate. Play series section. So the play series section is actually these three right below it: Analog Dreams, Ethereal Earth, and Hybrid Keys. The rest of them, these two I purchased separately. Kontakt, Factory Selection, this is also the one it comes with. As far as Reason, it has these factory sounds. It does not look as pretty as Kontakt's. So Kontakt definitely wins in the look battle in terms of the sample libraries. Got the orchestral sounds, you got the factory sounds, which kind of correlate the sounds to each individual device that Reason comes with, and the presets that ship with it. You got a drum supply, a bunch of drums that you can go through and use in your project. Loop supply. There's also the rack extensions. So the difference between the marketplaces for the two. If you're buying anything for Kontakt, you can kind of get it from a series of different marketplaces. You can get it from Plugin Boutique, you can get it from Native Instruments, you can go to Sound Iron, you can go to Output, and you can get these immaculate, beautiful, wonderful Kontakt libraries. If you want anything for Reason, you have to go to the Reason Studios website shop and purchase your sound libraries, which are actually called refills. There are sound packs, drum kits, loops, all kinds of things, but they are called refills because Reason, it's like a play on words for if you don't already know. And there's also the rack extensions, and these are devices that you can buy that aren't the ones that come with Reason. So for example, this device is called Hydro Nexius 2, and it has some really dope sounds for EDM, for trap, hip-hop beats. I mean, the sky's the limit. Is really dope. And then you got string work, and this is a really dope string plugin with some incredible string samples. So there are some good sample devices in it. You just kind of gotta dig. It's not as easy to find, and the developers aren't always as well known as those who develop for Kontakt. In terms of affordability, as I said before, they're both $399. But if you want to get into buying expansions and getting past those stock sounds and upgrading in the future, it might be more affordable with the Reason Rack plugin. The Reason Racks kind of vary in price, so I encourage you to check them out if that's something you're interested in. You're definitely going to kind of age out of what's already there, because I mean, you can never have enough sounds. And then with Kontakt, the average bank will run about $200 on average. It could be more, it could be less. So you're definitely going to be coming out of pocket more with those Kontakt libraries. Compatibility. Kontakt works in everything pretty seamlessly. Reason's compatibility is kind of up in the air sometimes. It depends on the computer you're using and the software you're using it in. For example, Reason works in Ableton Live on my Mac. It works in Pro Tools on my Mac. Reason also works in Pro Tools on a Windows computer, and it works in Ableton Live on a Windows computer. It also works in FL Studio on a Windows computer, but I have not had a smooth experience with Reason working in FL Studio on a Mac, and I have both, so I can speak from my personal experience, as I keep saying. So I would definitely give that 30-day trial a run, because you gotta make sure it works. The biggest takeaways from this comparison are that the Reason Rack has an all-around creative focus, while Kontakt has just a sample focus. Of course, there's synths in it, but it's all about samples. Reason is a sound designer's tool with some dope stock sounds for beat makers, and has an option of a Reason Plus subscription that's like Splice, but only has presets native to itself. So refills or Reason files. Reason is not only an instrument, but also a sampler, an effect, and a MIDI device like Scalar or Captain Chords. Kontakt reigns supreme in diversity and quality of banks, but you also pay a hefty price for those expansions. Just like you pay kind of a hefty price to upgrade Reason for the old users. with the new features they release. Usually $129 every year or two, but definitely not as much as an array of Kontakt expansions. So, is Reason better than Kontakt? As a sound designer, I'll say yes. As a music producer, I might say no. Sound designing is fun and easier in Reason than it is in Kontakt. I can drag and drop buttons, faders, assign parameters with ease, especially with the Combinator 2, while Kontakt requires scripting and an entire new skill to learn in order to do it. Kontakt is more boxy and a lot more archaic looking, although they both can be eyesores. With music production, if I have my mindset on expansions, guitars, vocals, strings, etc., I won't find that in Reason's expansion shop of refills and rack extensions. If I do, there'll be stripped down versions of Kontakt banks or old samples recorded with dated gear. I could also find better Midi devices like Scalar or the Captain plugin line to assist with song creation or whatever I might use it for. Reason devices are helpful but very basic and fail to cater to different genres that aren't always straight major or minor chords or strict scales like jazz, blues, house music, and so on. So the answer depends on the role and my process at any given moment. All veils aside, Reason is still a DAW, and hypothetically, choosing between a DAW and a plugin is kind of weird. I would go with Kontakt, knowing that I have access to a bunch of different types of synths, mixing plugins, MIDI devices that I've bought elsewhere, and I could live without the ones in Reason. But if I didn't have anything, it would be a great collection to start with. I would definitely choose Reason. It's something to think about, so let me know what you think in the comment section. It's all culture, kickback, and cook up.